There is a painful passage in the Talmud. And any of you, if you ever wondered why why so many righteous people died in the Holocaust, there's a passage in the Talmud that states, it's Gemara Shabbos, page 55, it says, 55a if you're taking notes, it says that God never changed his mind from something good to something bad with the following exception. It said that God says to the angel, by the destruction of the first temple, go down to the city of Jerusalem, put marks of ink, other way around, put marks of blood on the foreheads of all the wicked people, and they'll be killed when the plague comes, and put marks of ink on the foreheads of all the righteous people, and they'll be saved when the plague comes. So then in a beautiful description or discussion that can only take place in the Talmud, God then discusses the idea with his aspect of justice. This is not that God is schizophrenic. It's that ultimately God is something which transcends all of his attributes. But God therefore is unable to speak with one of the attributes, namely of justice. And God's aspect of justice turns around and says to God, hold it a second. What's the difference between these people and those people? And God says, what are you talking about? These people are completely righteous and those people are completely wicked. So God's attribute of justice then says, yeah. But what did the righteous people do to try to influence the wicked people? And God says, what are you talking about? He goes, I swear to you, even had they tried, they wouldn't have been successful. And God says, and the aspect of justice says back to God, you're right, but you knew that, and I know that. They didn't know that. They should have at least tried. And God said, you're correct. Go and put marks of blood on the forehead of all the righteous people, and they'll be the first ones killed when the plague comes. It's frightening when you read this passage. That means if somebody does consider themselves righteous, somebody does consider themselves aware, knowing, they got the truth, it's not good enough. That we have an absolute responsibility to take this truth and to teach it over to other people. Knowing something, knowing truth on your own, it's not just a shallow existence. It's an existence which ultimately is one which is quite difficult because knowledge is responsibility. And the more that one knows, the more responsibility a person has. And therefore everything that we learn, everything we learn this week and everything next week and everything we learned in the past and everything we learn in the future creates for ourselves more responsibility, and therefore you clearly see why there are many people out there who are frightened of knowledge. Because they're frightened of the responsibility. They'd rather live an existence which is more comfortable, which is one of the great difficulties of life. People have within them a death wish. The death wish is one of superficiality. People desire to lead lives which are superficial. People desire to lead lives where they avoid meaning. And it's this thing within us which, right when we approach greatness, it tells us, stop, don't go there, because if you go there, who knows what's going to happen. There are so many people out there that see themselves as good people, but if I only went one step further, I can really be good, I can really have an impact, I can really do something. But I don't want to work that hard, I don't want to go that far, I don't want to be so different. And that's why the world is the way that it is. Because people don't want to go further. And so many times in our lives when we have decisions in front of us, we opt to take the easier way out. We end up spending up so much of our time moving away from reality. And I don't know if there's any other way that you could explain the drug culture. If you can, on the one hand, explain why people would spend hours of their days of their weeks of their months involved in watching television. It's just an avoidance of life. I don't know if it's true, but I've heard psychologists have claimed that when a person watches television, their mind goes down as if it's on the lowest possible activity mode. That the only comparison is when a person is in a coma. When you're sleeping, your brain has much more activity because it's being active. When a person's watching television, it's completely passive. Why would a person do this for hours upon end? I mean, if you think about it, if your choice is to watch television, read a book, your mind is moving, there's something going on, there's thinking. But here you're completely passive, but people do it, people choose it. People live for it, and it's such a strange thing, but that's the society which we live in. People spend their days thinking about their nights. They spend their nights thinking about their weekends, and spend their weekends thinking about their vacations. And people constantly move further and further away from confronting something which is real and from confronting something which has meaning to it. And the single most important thing in a person's life is their meaning. And yet people avoid it step after step after step. So it's such a strange thing, but this is our lot and this is our existence.